Well, today, as some of you may know, it is the Ganesh Puja, and I was happy to see that there has been a small puja at Savitri Bhavan. Well, it's not a small puja, it's a small statue of Ganesha, but the puja is the same, big or small. So when I met with Shadavan outside, she said, "We have a beautiful Lord Ganesha at the back, why don't you go and see?" So those of you who have seen, you must have seen this, a beautiful little thing. But what I was happy to see was, there was a beautiful atmosphere around it. A very tiny statue of Ganesha. But I suppose that was perhaps purer than the one that we have at Vaitikuppam. It's a huge Ganesha, 10 feet, but there's so much of sound and noise, and this is under the tree, very beautiful and pure. Well, talking about Ganesha, I thought when we read Savitri, we have in Sri Aurobindo all these influences. I mean, not the Ganesh Puja or Krishna Jayanti, but there is quite I won't call it influence, but a lot of reference to the Vedas. It is amazing to see there is reference to the Vedas, to the Bible, to Tantra, to modern contemporary, not contemporary until its time, the Victorian, the Romantic, T.S. Eliot. All these influences are there. It's amazing to see how he has gathered all this. Not consciously, I would put it, that experientially he has absorbed all this into his being. It is not that when we write something, we say, "Hey, suddenly I remembered something from the Vedas, let me quote that," or the Gita, let me quote this. It's not a quotation, it is something that has gone into his being as it. So it's very spontaneous. So what we see in today's reading, which we had started in our previous class, that is his description of inspiration. As I said, this is one of the most inspiring passages itself, apart from the description of what inspiration does. As a poetic passage, it is highly inspired. And if I remember K.D. Setna well, he has written quite a lot on this passage, done a good bit of critical analysis, and selected some lines, I'll point them out when I come to them, as one of the best lines in Savitri. So this passage on inspiration is indeed one of those very, rare passages. And in all literature, scriptural or otherwise, you would hardly find any description that comes close to this. How one of these things one of these levels of inspiration or intuition, etc., they work actually in the human being. So, one of the things that we had read from the mother last time, if I remember rightly, is what is required for intuition or inspiration to work in the human being. The first thing which she described is the silence of the mind. If you remember, I had even read out one of her letters where she says, somebody asked the mother, how do we go about getting this intuition? The first thing she said was to quieten your mind. To quieten your mind, and what she had written to me personally was, I had also written a letter in those days because as a student we were told by our teachers that what the mother had said, that the age of mind and reason is over, and we should be aspiring to be guided by intuition. And in fact, that is one of the characteristics of the functions of the new man. Beyond the reason, he is guided more by intuition. So, being enthused and a bit inquisitive about how to go about it, I wrote to her. In fact, more or less I wrote to her the same thing, that our teachers are telling us that we should be guided by intuition, but how do you go about it? She said exactly the same thing that I read out to you in my last class from volume 9 of Mother's corrected volumes. That first, silence the mind. Well, that itself is a tremendous job. It's not so easy to say silence the mind. But at least if I can say quieten your mental thoughts, let them not really jump around, doing monkey tricks. At least if I can use the word ingather your thoughts. And with that quietness, he says, turn your mind upwards like a mirror and hold it like a mirror. And I had also mentioned, if some of you remember, in the letter that I had quoted from this volume 9, the word mirror was not used. Whereas in my letter she used the word hold it up like a mirror. Which means that when the higher consciousness or when intuition drops, our mind can reflect this higher intuition, thoughts, guidelines, whatever it may be. And then she said, I should have referred to my letter before coming to the class. Then she says, hold it for a while. Don't just, the moment you get an intuitive thought, don't come back to the mental state. Because usually, as Aurobindo would describe, mind is extremely clever in claiming these intuitions and saying, it's my idea. And the moment it claims the origin of this idea, it twists. And it brings in its specific, the famous mental attitude of division, claiming, and even the mental ego. So that spoils the whole thing. There's no purity of intuition. It gets diluted, twisted, and it loses its intensity as it. However, and if you remember, I touched upon the 4 levels of intuition. And these 4 levels were inspiration, revelation, discrimination, and what he calls as the truth touch. I will give different words for this, but last time when I read out from the letter, he said inspiration is truth hearing, revelation is truth seeing. Then the fourth one is truth touching. And lastly, we have discerning the truth or discrimination. Well, just keep that in mind. I'll read out a few lines and I'll come back to these four levels of intuition, and you'll see why I'm taking you into another track almost. But let me read out the lines so that we can refer to them as I go along with the explanation. In our last class, we had read till revealed by silence to the silent soul. If you can get your lines. The line is revealed by silence to the silent soul. Well, I'm continuing from there. Got it, Anandi? Got the line? Yeah. The intense creatrix in his stillness wrought, her power fallen speechless, grew more intimate. She looked upon the seen and the unforeseen, unguessed domains she made her native field. All vision gathered into a single ray, as when the eyes stare at an invisible point, till through the intensity of one luminous spot, an apocalypse of a world of images enters into the kingdom of the seer. A great nude arm of splendor suddenly rose. It rent the gorge opaque of nations. Her lifted fingers' keen, unthinkable tip bared with a stab of flame the closed beyond. An eye awakened voiceless heights of trance, a mind plucking at the unimaginable, overleaping with a soul and perilous bound, the high black wall hiding superconscience. She broke in with inspired speech for Psyche and plundered the unknowable's vast estate. A gleaner of infinitesimal grains of truth, a sheaf binder of infinite experience, she pierced the guarded mysteries of world force, and her magic methods wrapped in 1,000 veils. Or she gathered the lost secrets dropped by time in the dust and crannies of his mounting route, mid old forsaken dreams of hastening mind and buried remnants of forgotten space. A traveller between summit and abyss, she joined the distant ends, the viewless deeps, or streaked along the roads of heaven and hell, pursuing all knowledge like a questing hound. A reporter and scribe of hidden wisdom talk, her shining minutes of celestial speech passed through the master office of the occult mind, transmitting gave to prophet and to seer the inspired body of the mystic truth. A recorder of the inquiry of the gods, spokesman of the silent sayings of the Supreme, she brought immortal words to mortal men. Well, this is the passage I wish to cover. I take this as one single thought. Now, there are a few words that aroused my curiosity of research mind. You see, after, if you have noted that, there's a line here, and plundered the unknowable's vast estate. There's one line there. And then there's another line which reads, pursuing all knowledge like a questing hound, the image of hound. And then you have other phrases here, which I will point out as I go along. And then I stopped at this and I really said, there is something that's ringing in my mind when I read these phrases. And I really went into this, into the Vedas, and there I see the full explanation. If not the full explanation, there's quite a lot of light thrown on this passage. What does how does the Vedas help us here? You see, in this volume 10, The Secret of the Veda, I don't know if you have read this volume, but I think there are lots of things to read. Each time I read something on Aurobindo, I was telling Deepshika, now I would like to take up the study of the Vedas and the Upanishads in the light of Aurobindo. Because you get such gems when you read this, and suddenly I say, wow. Now I understand the Vedas, Upanishads better having read Aurobindo, not vice versa. Because I look at these passages from his light, through his eyes, you see. Now, the 4 levels of intuition that I read out from Aurobindo's letters previously are actually referred to in the Vedas also. That's what is amazing. And these 4 aspects that are referred to are actually given names, proper names. We have what we said, truth hearing, which we said is inspiration. In the Vedas, the word given is Saraswati. I'll give you a few more details. Just give you the name Saraswati is truth hearing, is inspiration. Then remarkably we have revelation, we have truth vision or seeing truth or truth vision. The goddess is called Ila, I-L-A. So we have truth hearing, inspiration, truth vision, revelation is goddess Ila. And then we have intuition, truth touch. If you remember, we had the last one, truth touch. That is intuition. And there we have the name Sarama, goddess Sarama, S-A-R-A-M-A, Sarama. And the 4th one, which we said is discrimination of truth or discerning truth. It is called the intuitional discrimination. And the goddess is called Dakshina, D-A-K-S-H-I-N-A, Dakshina. So what is amazing is that the Vedas have already described these 4 levels of intuition, which in fact Aurobindo describes in his own letters and in the Life Divine I read out to you last time. So, not only these names come forward, but there's a whole lot of literature on these 4 goddesses in the Vedas. So we have the 4 of them, Saraswati, Sarama, Ila, Dakshina. And we have also 4 other names which are a little connected, but I'll mention and then I'll tell you, which is the 4 names of Sarama. Of course, what we said is intuition. Sometimes Sarama is called Bharati. So there is a name Sarama or Bharati, whichever. Then there is Ila and Mahi. So these are again the 4 goddesses or the 3 goddesses. What's interesting is I mean, I'm sorry, but I'm just sharing with you what I'm enjoying and discovering new truths. I mean, you may like it or not, but I'm so excited when I see these things in the Vedas and in Aurobindo. I said, yeah, I have to tell this in the class today, and it's so good. Now, if you remember the phrase for supermind, what is that phrase for supermind that we have? No, in Sanskrit. Yeah, go ahead. Huh? No. It is Satyam, Ritam, Brihat. This is the Vedic word for supermind. So imagine we have three words, Satyam, Ritam and Brihat, which is equivalent of the supermind. And Satyam is about the truth. So we have Sarama and Bharati, or one of them. They represent Satyam. That means the truth hearing, the truth vision. And Ila and Mahi, they represent Brihat. You see, I picked up these from different readings, it's not in one place. So when I put them together, what do I get? That these four goddesses, they represent the supermind. Satyam is what we have Sarama and Saraswati. Ila and Dakshina and Mahi, they represent Mahi and Brihat. So Satyam, Ritam, Brihat, these two aspects of truth and the rhythm is the rhythm. So these two main aspects of supermind are given four names, four goddesses. And what is most wonderful is that when Aurobindo was in Baroda, he saw these four goddesses, Ila, Mahi, Sarama, I don't know about Dakshina, I'm not too sure. But these four goddesses came to him weeping. Weeping not in the literal sense of what human weep, in the sense imploring him to bring them out of these Vedas. I mean, they have been kind of, over the centuries, no one has, really brought them out in their truth. We have great commentators like Sayana and others who had never touched upon this truth. So these truths were embedded in the Vedas and they were not able to come out. So they implore Aurobindo saying, please bring us out. And that is how Aurobindo takes up the interpretation or translation of the Vedas even while he was in Baroda. And imagine he had just learned the Sanskrit then. So he learned the Sanskrit, learned how to read the Vedas and the Upanishads, translate them, interpret them. And so what he says is beautiful. He says first he realized the Vedas, the truths of the Vedas, and then they got it confirmed when he was translating. So the goddesses, he has experiences of the goddesses first, and then when he sees the Vedas or reads the Vedas or translates them, he sees that, these are the Vedic goddesses. I mean, this is quite usual with Aurobindo. He has first the experience, and then he translates it only for you and me into English or whatever it does. So this is the story of these four levels. I mean, there's a lot more to say, but that's just the beginning of these four levels described by Aurobindo are the eternal truths of supermind which have been described in the Vedas themselves. So I mean, you get aghast to see that the Vedic rishis had already contacted so much. It's not just, they had seen a golden lid and then they said beyond the golden lid is the beautiful supermind. It's not that. They had really connected with that consciousness and even connected the manifestations of these goddesses. So that's why I was saying there's so much of cross-reference between Aurobindo and the Vedas. See, the more you read you see a whole universe. That's why I suppose now I understand why the mother said there is everything in Savitri, the history, the history of the earth, history of mankind, the future of mankind, all the influences. Now you see from the point of view of poetry, there is Vedas and what you have seen. And if you go along, I don't think I can finish this canto in the whole year. There are so many references. The roots go to the Vedas, many of these images, they trace back to Vedas or the Tantra or the Gita or the Upanishads. And next time I think our Vladimir comes to visit Auroville, catch him. He is the best authority to tell us the influence of the Vedas in Savitri. He has made a special study. So now I am beginning to discover that and I am much excited. Now, there is, I'll have to take you back. Okay, these are there's another reference I'd like to read from page 87 of this volume 10. Why we say not only is there a connection with the Vedas, but how there is a kind of a universality even in this connection with the Vedas. In what way? And as I tell you, and I will not be tired of telling you, there's the mother who helps me to discover these things. In this ocean of 30 volumes, I don't know where my hand goes, but as I told you, Sunday morning is my preparation, so thanks to my wife, she keeps me all things ready and I go and start into my study. And I just do the discovery. So on page 87, there is a beautiful paragraph. Some of you who know Western mythology should be able to recollect. It says Saraswati in India, as most of you know, this is the name of a river. And Saraswati, the word itself means movement, that which moves forward. So it has been given a name to Saraswati, and inspiration is also that which moves forward, which brings in the truth from a higher levels. There's a movement and a motion. So from there the name Saraswati has come. Saraswati is not only the goddess of inspiration, she is at one and the same time one of the 7 rivers of the early Aryan world. The question at once arises, whence came this extraordinary identification? And how does the connection of the two ideas present itself in the Vedic hymns? And there is more. For Saraswati is important not only in herself, but by her connections. Before proceeding further, let us cast a rapid and cursory glance at them to see what they can teach us. The association of a river with the poetical inspiration occurs also in Greek mythology. But there the muses are not conceived as rivers. They are only connected in a not very intelligible fashion with a particular earthly stream. This stream is the river Hippocrene, the fountain of the horse. Well, I remember my days with Temiban. Hippocrene is the river Hippocrene, the fountain of the horse. And to account for its name, we have a legend that it sprang from the hoof of the divine horse Pegasus. Remember that? Something? Pegasus. So it's this divine horse which has stamped with his hoof the rock, and from there the stream, the river comes out, and that river is called Hippocrene. And the beauty is, for he smote the rock with his hoof, and the waters of inspiration gushed out where the mountain had been thus smitten. Was this legend merely a Greek fairy tale, or had it any special meaning? And it is evident that if it had any meaning, it must, since it obviously refers to a psychological phenomenon, the birth of the waters of inspiration, have had a psychological meaning. It must have been an attempt to put into concrete figures certain psychological facts. We may note that the word Pegasus If we transliterate into the original Aryan phonetics, it becomes Pajasa, and is obviously connected with the Sanskrit Pajas, which meant originally force, movement, or sometimes footing. So Pajas, Pegasus, and even in Greek itself it is connected with Pege. I don't know the word Pege or Pege, meaning a stream. So now Sri Aurobindo is seeing the word Pegasus, Pajas also means originally force and movement, which is Saraswati again, a stream of thought, and also Pege in Greek means stream. Then he is saying, therefore, or there is therefore, in the terms of this legend, a constant association with the image of a forceful movement of inspiration. If we turn to Vedic symbols, we see that the Ashwa or horse is an image of the great dynamic force of life, of the vital and nervous energy, and is constantly coupled with other images that symbolize the consciousness. Now in Indian mythology, in Vedic mythology, we have a similar story. That's where I think Sri Aurobindo gives us a parallel. Here we have the Pegasus, which has smitten the rock with his hoof, and the river comes out. Now in Indian Vedic mythology, we have the horse named Dadikravan. Dadikravan is the name of the horse which is parallel to Pegasus. So it's the same Dadikravan who smites the rock, who smites the rocks of the mountain, and under the mountain in his caves are hidden the cows. And that's a big story of the Angirasas, I'll tell you later. But again you see it's a similar story. Sri Aurobindo is referring to that somewhere. I don't know where it is. The story is this, that Panis or Dasyus, they are the dark forces, the evil forces, the anti-divine forces, which steal the cows. Now what is this stealing of the cows? Well, it's a very strange thing. You may not get the whole meaning of this word cow. Cow, go, is light or illumination. So the story is that these Dasyus or Panis, they steal the cows from the gods, take them and hide them in the caves under a mountain. And now the gods are saying, how do we get back those cows? And to get back those cows, there is Varuna. Varuna is the god of vastness. So Varuna, Varuna, and he is sent out saying, find those cows. Because he is the being of the vastness, so he can spread out himself into the universe and say, where are the cows? But then for this search, it's not enough to spread out, you have to focus also. And there they ask Sarama. Sarama is now we know is intuition. So they tell us that how intuition comes into play. And that intuition says, the cows are here under this cave. Because intuition is sure knowledge. So it doesn't have to grope around. And for this picture of Sarama going around, they have also called Sarama as the hound of the divine hound, Hound, hound. So the hound has a fantastic smell. I mean, it can really find out things from far. So Sarama sometimes is called the hound and sometimes is the goddess. And that is the word that we have here that I was referring to. Pursuing all knowledge like a questing hound. You see why I stopped at that word? Because it took me back to Sarama. So pursuing all knowledge like a questing hound. So hound is that Sarama. Sarama is one of those four godheads. And these four godheads out of them Sarama is employed to find out the cows. And the cows, as I said, are the light or the illumination of the divine. And now you will say, what is cows? What is that illumination? Well, let me finish this story. So when Sarama finds out where exactly is the cave where the cows are hidden, then there is the Dadikravan, the divine horse. Horse, the other word in Sanskrit is Ashwa. And you know Savitri, Ashwapati, the lord of the horses. And not only that, we have seen the Ashwa is also the great dynamic force of life, of the vital and nervous energy. I mean, try to connect all this and it becomes such a beautiful picture. Ashwapati is the lord of dynamic force of life, L capital. He is not the dynamic force of the mind. So Ashwapati is there to transform life. He represents the aspiration of life for the higher consciousness. And that is what all this, what we are doing 18 years of tapasya, is that life energy, is that life consciousness which is aspiring for the consciousness beyond. So he is Ashwapati, he is that life energy, and he is also called Dadikravan, because it is this Dadikravan which again stamps the mountain with its hoof, and there is a crack, and the cows, they emerge out of that crack into the open. And now you see the proximity of Pegasus, the Greek mythology, the Vedic mythology of the Dadikravan, and here in Greek mythology we have Hippocrene, the river that comes forth, and here there is the river of the illumination of the cows that burst forth. So Aurobindo somewhere comments where I have forgotten that. He says that this meaning, I mean, I'm sure the Greeks and the ancient Indians, they did not have any communication, your internet and mobile and all that. But they had the real intuition for these are the eternal truths of this creation. What was discovered 10,000 years back, later the Greeks discovered, put it in their own way. But look at the remarkable closeness between Pegasus, Dadikravan, the streams of Saraswati, Hippocrene. And now to take you a little deeper, some of you may have read this, but I would like to bring to some of you who may not be aware. The Vedic hymns, whatever else they may be, are throughout an invocation to certain Aryan gods, friends and helpers of man, for ends which are held by the singers. By the way, this is on page 132, those are following. For ends which are held by the singers or seers, as they call themselves Kavi, Rishi, Vipra, to be supremely desirable. These desirable ends, these boons of the gods are summed up in the words Rai, Radhas, which may mean physically wealth or prosperity, and psychologically a felicity or enjoyment which consists in the abundance of certain forms of spiritual wealth. Man contributes as a share of the joint effort, the work of the sacrifice, the word, the soma wine, and the grita, or clarified butter. The gods are born in the sacrifice. They increase by the word, the wine, and the grita, and in that strength and in the ecstasy and intoxication of the wine they accomplish the aims of the sacrificer. The chief elements of the wealth thus acquired are the cow and the horse. But there are also others, Hiranya, gold, Veera, men or heroes, Ratha, chariots, Praja or Apatya, offering. The very means of the sacrifice, the fire, the soma, the grita are supplied by the gods, and they attend the sacrifice as its priests, purifiers, upholders, heroes of its welfare, etc. Now, because I want to clarify this, because some of you may have a wrong impression of the Vedas, because one of our very good friends 200 years back from Germany gave a very bad interpretation of the Vedas and telling that these are agriculture people, they didn't know they are barbarians and all that and all that. So thanks to that German, the Vedas have become badnaam, we have in Hindi a word badnaam, ill name or a wrong name, and at least they came to be known in the Western world that there is something called Vedas, the most ancient literature available in this civilization. But he had not understood that. But the badnaam became the good name, or the bad name became the good name. And Aurobindo here is giving us the right interpretation that yes, all these Vedic rishis, or the singers or the seers, they did this yajna or this invocation to certain godheads. Now when they invoked, most of these verses of the Vedas, they were asking for a couple of things. One is the cow. So the German scholar said, cow means, the agrarians. So these Vedic people, at that time there are no industries, they were agriculture people, so they must be wanting cows and horses, because these are the two important things for agriculturists. So what's wrong in that? There's nothing wrong if they really pray that give me 100 cows or 500 horses. They say, but natural, they want it. And of course after that, what do women want? Gold. I said, yes, what's wrong in that? So, and then men of heroes, men want to be heroic people, so let me be a Veera, a great hero. And then chariots, very natural for an agriculture people, because there are no other vehicle but chariots. And praja or apatya, that's nice, offspring. That I want to have children. Why Ashwapati himself did all this great tapasya for what? To have an offspring. So you see, all these things fall naturally into that interpretation that these were agrarian people. They wanted offspring, heroic people, beautiful gold ornaments and horses. But then Aurobindo comes in and says, but even this prosperity, this fullness of cows, horses, gold, men, chariots, offspring, is not a final end in itself. All this is a means towards the opening up of the other worlds, the winning of Swara, the ascent to the solar heavens, the attainment of the path of the truth to the light and to the heavenly bliss where the mortal arrives at immortality. So with a single word, single sentence he clarifies, all these are not things that were really asked for by these rishis as material prosperity. They were means to attain other worlds, the Swaralokas, the worlds beyond this earth. So obviously if that is the aim, the cow and the horse must be having some other meaning. And that's where he gives us in our page 133. For them these material objects were symbols of the immaterial. The cows were the radiances or illuminations of a divine dawn. The horses and chariots were symbols of force and movement. Gold was light, the shining wealth of a divine sun. The true light, Rhythm Jyoti. That's why no wonder Mathamandir is wrapped in gold, it's that light. The true light, Rhythm Jyoti. Both the wealth acquired by the sacrifice and the sacrifice itself in all the details symbolize man's effort and his means towards a greater end, the acquisition of immortality. So this is the sum and substance of what we see in the Vedas. That all this is constantly an effort to achieve an immortality. Immortality of the soul, that means the realization of the Brahman. But for that, they had to go through the yajnas. And coming back to this picture, what I was telling you about the cows. Now you have understood the cows are symbols of radiances or illuminations of a divine dawn. Now I go back to my story called the Angirasa story. Angirasa are the rishis. So when we see that the cows have been discovered and they are brought out by Sarama, the goddess of inspiration, intuition, or the divine how do we connect it with Sri Aurobindo? It's easy, now you understand. The light, the cows, the go are the superconscient light, is the superconscient consciousness. Or what we say, the superconscient which has come down into the inconscient. What is below the rock, below the mountain, is nothing but the inconscient. So now you see, this is the process of involution. That how that supreme light comes down through the different levels that we know and sinks into the inconscient. And from the inconscient, it has to be brought out. What it is the superconscient light. That is the process of evolution. So in Sri Aurobindo we have the different interpretation, but the Vedic imagery stands true. That the supreme light comes down into the caves, into the inconscient. There it is hidden, and it is intuition that brings them back. Well, to make things easier, I think I told you the story of Brahman. Brahma once he discovers suddenly that he doesn't have much of power and energy. Not that he didn't have a good sleep last night, but somehow he wakes up in the morning, he says, "Hey, I feel so weak, and what's happened to my energy?" And of course he discovers that he is so low on energy because his Shakti, Brahmajaya, she is not at home. Well, it's a great compliment to all the ladies here. So Brahmajaya is not at home, so Brahma is feeling weak, looking for his breakfast, no one to give the breakfast. So he says, "Hey, I'm hungry, nobody's there around." So he tells Varuna, "What's happened? Brahmajaya has gone out, and please go and find her." And the same symbology there, another story, but the symbology is the same. Varuna, who is sent out, Sarama, who is again sent out to find where she is, and they discovered that this Brahmajaya is hidden in the inconscient. You see how these are stories, but you come to Sri Aurobindo, is exactly what Sri Aurobindo tells you in philosophy in the Life Divine. So Brahmajaya has come out from Brahma and hiding in the caves down in the earth in the inconscient. So once she is discovered, Brahma says, "Now you have to bring her back." How do you do that? So there Brahma sends Agni. So Agni, the fire. Agni is the psychic fire. The psychic fire is symbol of love. So Agni comes down, tells Brahmajaya, saying, "Look, without you, Brahma is helpless. So please come back." And then, because Agni pours the psychic fire of love, there is an awakening of love in Brahmajaya. She says, "Yes, I'll come back." And that coming back, the return of love, is again nothing but your Savitri and Satyavati. You see, we cannot escape the Vedas. You may look at it from this way or that way, but I'm trying to bring you to notice that how all the stories are really embedded in this Savitri. So this whole question of Savitri, incarnation of love, bringing out Satyavan, bringing back, what is that? Again the same thing in the inconscient. So she is opening the inconscient, bringing it back and conquering death, so the Satyavan can be brought back. Same story. And then imagine Narad telling Satyavan, Savitri, that what is the famous line, "Satyavan, this day returning, Satyavan must die." It has come 3 or 4 times in Savitri. Satyavan must die on this day, or 12th day, 12 months past, he has to die, this day returning, in different ways. But why is the Sri Aurobindo has emphasized so much on this single line which comes at the end of book 1, canto 1, and then again and again? Sometimes you wonder why is it that this single line of, Satyavan must die is so important. Or is it that there is a kind of a negativity, a kind of a pessimism that's created, there's kind of a gloomy atmosphere? Because constantly we are reminded that Satyavan must die. But friends, now I have told you enough of the Vedas. So this death, Brahmajaya hiding, the inconscient, the cows, is all the same story. What Aurobindo is telling us through Savitri is one of the most ancient Vedic story. In fact, that is why he calls it a Vedic cycle that is completed in Savitri. In the note, if you have read that note on Savitri, given by Aurobindo, a para or two where he says it is a Vedic cycle that is completed. So if you really see what is this Vedic cycle that Aurobindo is completing, marvelous, it's the same story. So you see, I'm giving you all these connections to tell you, yes, there's a lot of the Vedas and there is a kind of a Vedas have been fulfilled. What that envisaged, Aurobindo fulfills. That is the beauty of Savitri. And there, also that is the subconscious I was wanted to tell you, and coming back to the Vedas to wind up. So the Vedic seers always wanted immortality. And what does Aurobindo wanted the Savitri? Immortality. But here you say is physical immortality in Aurobindo. In the Vedas is the spiritual immortality, that's the realization of your own self or spirit or Brahman. But the word immortality is common between the Vedas and Aurobindo. And what the Vedic rishis have given, the word sacrifice, is the same word in Aurobindo's yoga. Same means not the same word, but sacrifice in Aurobindo is named as surrender. Surrender. So the end of Aurobindo's yoga is surrender. The end of Vedic yoga is the word sacrifice. So you see again another similarity. They insisted on sacrifice, yajna, and yajna is one process where there is an equal participation of the gods and men. Men poured forth into that fire, ghritam, the clarified butter, and then they brought out from their side the wealth, the joint effort of sacrifice, the word, they increased the word, the wine and the grita, that means the clarified butter we pour and the gods pour from them, their side, their own contribution, their own powers. So yajna was not something, a puja, what we do as I started telling you, the Ganesh puja. Puja is an action where you are offering to the divine. But yajna is a process where there is an equal participation of man and God. That is why the beauty of yajna. And coming to Aurobindo, it's the same thing. You see, when you surrender to the divine takes you up and gives himself. So see how psychologically Aurobindo has kept up the beautiful Vedic symbology. And the precision of the Vedic mantras is so specific. I mean, I'm not good at chemistry, but if H2O is turned into HO2, anybody experts in chemistry? Hey, chemistry. What does it mean? What does it become? H2O to HO2? Is there anything called HO2? Nothing. H2O2, right? Okay, I take your formula. Instead of calling H2O and they say H2O2, what has it become? Poison? Okay. You see, a simple, beautiful, purified water becomes something else. Well, single O2. Aurobindo would say, the Vedic mantras are as precise as your chemical formulas. If you pronounce a mantra imprecisely, wrongly, remove a word, put another word, it will become O2, H2O2. So each mantra is precise, has a definite capacity for manifestation, has a definite vibration to itself. And that is why the Vedic mantra, the other day she went to judge a school where there were mantras being chanted and 50% of the marks were given for the proper pronunciation. Because pronunciation, there are lots of stories where there's a mispronunciation, H2O2, and then the whole thing goes wrong. So you see, the Vedas were that kind of a precise mantras. And now Aurobindo gives you his own mantra. Savitri is the mantra for the transformation of the world. So what more do you want to see? I mean, you can go on and on. I mean, the more I read, I want to read now the Vedas in the light of Savitri and Savitri in the light of the Vedas. And it's such a marvelous discovery. So here, what I told you today is I was inspired myself to go into the depths of this single word, questing hound. And then I came to this word and plundered the unknowable's vast estate. And now you understand the word plundered, that's where the Dhadikravan or Pegasus, they break the mountain or the rock. And here inspiration is plundering, is breaking open. So now in the light of this, I don't have much time, but now I'll go slowly, line by line. What? Yeah, I'm going through the line by line. Now with this background, now let us see, now what is the background? You have the Sarama, the divine hound, you have intuition, you have Pegasus, one who breaks the inconscient, and then we have understood that how truths are hidden in the inconscient, they are to be brought out by Agni or by Sarama. Here, it is Sarama or inspiration. Now let me take out the line. The intense creatrix. Now why is the word creatrix and not creator? Creatrix is feminine. And now obviously Sarama is the feminine goddess. So we have intense creatrix in a stillness wrought. In Ashwapati stillness wrought. Her power fallen speechless grew more intimate. You see, as we said, inspiration, intuition, they don't require human language. They don't require words. So it conveys something without words, and yet it is so intimate. You know, the word intimate, if you can understand, I think I get the point here. The more the words there are, I think you become non-intimate, because there's so much of possibility of non-understanding and misunderstanding. That's why I think conveyed in silence is much surer, it brings in a closeness. And then it says, she looked upon the seen and the unforeseen, unguessed domain she made her native field. All the time she is Sarama, or the goddess of inspiration, or Saraswati. So unguessed domains she made her native field. You know, unguessed by mind. Reason can't even guess what these truths are. But for inspiration, these are the common native truths, because she knows all these things. All vision gathered into a single ray. This is a beautiful imagery, try to understand that. All vision gathered into a single ray, as when the eyes stare at an invisible point, till through the intensity of one luminous spot, an apocalypse of a world of images enters into the kingdom of the seer. Try to practice that. I mean, I tried to do that in the morning yesterday. Look at a point which is, as he calls it, an invisible point. You're not focusing. It's not that invisible, I'm seeing the wall, but when there's no focus, I don't know where it is. There's no one-pointedness. Then he says, just as when the eyes stare at the invisible point, till through the intensity of one luminous spot. I remember the mother telling us that, one of the ways to I think that's what she did herself, and she's telling us to do the same. Is if you want to penetrate anything, focus on that until that point breaks or until that point gives in. You see, when we want to look at the mother's photo, we have got meditation, and some of us, we are not able to silence our thoughts and focus our thoughts. So the best thing is, you have a mother's photograph, whichever you like, whichever appeals to you, because each one of us, we may have our own preferred photograph. So look into her eyes. And then that is one of the methods of Patanjali Yoga too. When you are staring at a single point, you look at it, you stare at it, and then the mother says, at a point, you go beyond. There's a breakthrough. And that's what Aurobindo is telling us. Till through the intensity of one luminous spot, an apocalypse of a world of images enters. So here, he has penetrated, this inspiration comes into your mind, breaking into infinite images or bringing great knowledge. But this is a yogic practice which we can try, looking into the mother's eyes or Aurobindo's eyes, and keep staring. And suddenly you feel the image vanishing, and something blur happens, and then the external form is not there anymore, and there you will feel the presence. So that is one of the easy ways that Patanjali also had told, and I see Mother adapting the same thing, and Aurobindo is telling us similar thing. A great nude arm of splendor suddenly rose. It rent the gauge opaque of nations. You see what I gave you the image? The nations is the inconscient. And so, it rent the gauge opaque of nations, her lifted fingers keen, unthinkable tip, bared with a stab of flame that closed beyond. Now here, like we said, Sarama, the hound, which finds the place. Here this Sarama, just with a fingertip, she pointed to that spot in the nations, and there the consciousness broke through, and there was a stab of flame that closed beyond. And I awakened voiceless heights of trance, a mind plucking at the unimaginable, overleaping with a soul and perilous bound, the high black wall hiding superconscience. She broke in with inspired speech for sight and plundered the unknowable's vast estate. You see, all this imagery is again Vedic. The one was the inconscient, the other one, it can be the unknowable, he calls it. So what has happened? She broke in with an inspired speech for sight. Sight is a large curved instrument for cutting, in the West we all use that, we don't have that in India. So for cutting grass or harvesting. So here inspiration is using her inspired speech to cut, to mow, to open up that unknowable beyond. And again there's another beautiful aspect of inspiration, a gleaner of infinitesimal grains of truth. This is again a very, very detailed, that's what I'm so happy, so surprised to see. It's not just a vast truth or huge inconscient and all that. But this inspiration gives you small truths, very infinitesimal. A gleaner, somebody gleans, collects. A gleaner of infinitesimal grains of truth. A sheep binder of infinite experience. Those of you who have seen agriculture, you know the imagery. You glean that there is a sheaf binder, you put them, the paddy together, you bind it together. A sheaf binder of infinite experience. She pierced the garden mysteries of world force and her magic methods wrapped in 1,000 veils. Or she gathered the lost secrets dropped by time. You see, this is again a beautiful image. Lost secrets dropped by time. They have been forgotten. But inspiration now brings them back from the womb of the forgotten time. She brings them back. She gathered the lost secrets dropped by time in the dust and crannies of his mounting root. The dust and crannies, how beautiful. When time passes, some of these beautiful truths have been thrown here and there. They are hidden there in the cranny and the dust of time, but inspiration brings them back. Mid old forsaken dreams of hastening mind and buried remnants of forgotten space. A traveller between summit and abyss. Now it's very clear, abyss is the inconscient. Inspiration comes into the abyss. She joined the distant ends, the viewless deeps, because this is what is beautiful. Both are deeps. The inconscient is deep, the superconscient is deep. There are two, as the Vedas say, there are two oceans. There's again a Vedic imagery. One, the ocean of inconscient, the ocean of superconscient. So the same word he says, using here, she joined the distant end, the viewless deeps, or streaked along the roads of heaven and hell, pursuing all knowledge like a questing hound. So that is the Sarama, the inspiration, intuition, Saraswati. So you have Saraswati, the inspiration, Sarama, the intuition. So now we have the description of Saraswati. Sometimes there is a touch of Sarama, especially in the last one, questing hound. A reporter and scribe of hidden wisdom talk, her shining minutes of celestial speech. But here there is one thing I should explain. A reporter is who? One who gathers information and reports it to somebody, passes this information to somebody. Now who is that somebody to whom Saraswati is passing on this information? That's a very important question. Again the Vedas come into picture. Here, one who is getting the reports of all this is Indra, the Lord of the mental consciousness. So Indra, he is gathering the reports from Saraswati, Sarama and all this. Because that is the mental consciousness. So Saraswati, as a reporter, she gives information to him. Reporter and scribe of hidden wisdom talk, her shining minutes of celestial speech. She takes the minutes and gives them to Indra. Passed through the masked office of the occult mind, transmitting, gave to prophet and to seer the inspired body of the mystic truth. You see, this mystic truth is all that Saraswati gathered in her, in this crannies and in the as Aurobindo calls secrets dropped by time. A recorder of the inquiry of the gods, spokesman of the silent seeings of the Supreme, she brought immortal words to mortal men. So we are here. That is the function of inspiration, gathering secrets from time lost, gathering small secrets of the present, gathering the light from the inconscient caves. All this discovery of knowledge, all this great knowledge is now passed on, given to whom? The prophet and the seer. And then this says, spokesman of the silent seeings of the Supreme. You see, appreciate the alliteration. Spokesman, sir. Silent, sir. Seeing, sir. Supreme, sir. This is a beautiful alliteration. That itself brings in a kind of a sure, the silence. Spokesman of the silent seeings of the Supreme, she brought immortal words to mortal men. How does she bring? She brings all this in the silence of your mind. So this is the function. But there's a little more, but which we'll take up next time. There's a next para that we'll see. A new idea comes in. So, friends, this is what I wanted to share with you. That is full of Vedic imagery. And if we can connect the two, we will be able to enjoy, not understand, enjoy more Savitri. Because it's like the other day, Deepshika and myself, we were listening to some songs, classical songs and, Bhairavi and this and that. I was enjoying the music, no doubt. Both of us were enjoying. But she knew the words. I couldn't gather the words. I said, Deep, tell me the words. When you know this connection, otherwise, Indian ragas, they don't require words. They are the minimum. The 3 or 4 words and then they play a whole raga on that or one sentence. But even then, learning from her the exact words gave me a greater joy, because you understand the meaning, the connection, the description of Krishna or this. Otherwise, even that I was enjoying. That's exactly how I say, if you can understand the links with Veda or the Bible or the Gita or the Upanishads or T.S. Eliot or the romantic poet, there is kids in that as much as the best of kids you can get. There's Tennyson here, there's romantic poets here, there's T.S. Eliot here. So if you can find that, it enhances your own joy. If you don't know, well, Sava, get going. But get those words and suddenly say, wow, what a connection. So now the word Ashwapati itself has so many layers of meaning. Dadikravan, the Lord of life. Ashwapati is the Lord of energy. However, so that's why I went into Vedas and let me see if I can. And then, by the way, well, I think I'll keep it for next time. This whole conversation between Savitri and death, you have a long dialogue. Go back into your Katha Upanishad. Katha Upanishad, Nachiketas. I was reading the Upanishads and I was recollecting what Savitri is talking to death. Again, in that conversation between Savitri and death, there's so much of Katha Upanishad there. Incredible. Katha Upanishad. Katha, K-A-T-H-A. So it is extraordinary. So the more I read, the more I'm enjoying finding the discoveries.
What is Ila?
No, Ila, she is not in this four. We have four: Saraswati, Sarama, we have Dakshina, and also Ila. Ila is truth touch. Ila is truth vision. No, it is revelation, is truth vision. Dakshina is discrimination. Four. Saraswati is inspiration, Sarama is intuition, Ila is revelation, and Dakshina is intuition. Yeah, let's have the concentration.